Who's getting blamed for the government shutdown? A new Washington Post poll shows nearly half of respondents blame President Trump and Republicans. And when it comes to what's at the core of the impasse between Republicans and Democrats, 7 in 10 Americans side with Democrats in saying Obamacare subsidies should be extended. We're joined now by Republican Congressman Rich McCormick of Georgia. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. It's a really interesting poll because it shows a lot more people are blaming the president and congressional Republicans than Democrats. Yes, there are a lot of people who aren't really sure what to think at this point, but how are you seeing this?
Well, first of all, I'm seeing polls all over the place. It depends on how you poll. Literally, last night I was listening to another liberal media station that had it flipped upside down, and the guy who was being interviewed said, "No, that's just the way we phrased it in the polling." Polling is not very accurate because the pollsters generally get out of it what they want. Depending on how you phrase the question is, you'll get exactly the question you're looking for, the answer that you're looking for. So I don't trust those polls. In my district, which is in the area that I live in, very much a toss-up, most people understand that this CR is the compromise. This is the same CR that we voted for back in December, that 100% of the Democrats voted for. When you talk about the big, beautiful bill and the modifications we made to Medicaid, my question is, for those Americans out there, I know you got a ton of viewers out there who are paying exorbitant amount of money for their health insurance premiums. Since the Affordable Care Act, you guys have witnessed about a 90% increase in your premiums. It's the second biggest leading cost to businesses. It's probably the biggest cost that you have to your family, both privately and also in the federal government, which is about 33% of our federal budget. Meanwhile, 4 of the top 10 Fortune 500 companies in America are making 230% more profit since that same Affordable Care Act was installed. And this is basically going to stuff the pockets of those industry people. This is not for good sake. This is not to keep people who are hurting on Medicaid. That's not being taken away from anybody. What we're doing is making sure that the wrong people, the fraudulent people, the people who can get jobs, the people who are capable, the people who would benefit themselves by being out in society doing volunteer work, getting training for a job, doing part-time job, or working, are doing what they're supposed to do. Those are all good for America, good for homes, and good for our children. That should not be controversial, and I despise the fact that Democrats are using this as a divisive point.
Well, there is a debate over that, but let's talk about the Democratic demand here, which is this Obamacare enhanced subsidy extension that they want, because you saw the poll number on that. And I hear you. You're just kind of like dismissing polls as if none of them mean, anything. But that's a Washington Post poll, and you might be dismissing it at your peril. So if we take a look at that and we take a look at Georgia, which obviously is of interest to you, among the 1.4 million ACA enrollees in Georgia who get these enhanced premium tax credits that are so popular with people, as we just showed, 500,000 Georgians could lose their insurance if tax credits expire. That's according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. They're pretty good with their numbers. You're talking about how expensive health insurance is. You see how much that matters to Americans. This is a real concern, and you're certainly aware of that.
Yeah, and it's funny. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world. It's not even close. Anybody who's been overseas and been to an emergency room
address the
knows
subsidy, please. Can you address the subsidy
here.
extension?
But no, I'm going to address that. But you got to allow me to address this. I'm a physician. I'm a healthcare expert on the Doctors Caucus. But if you don't allow me to explain this, I can't educate the public, and we can't transform this conversation into a healthy topic rather than a partisan topic. So you have to let me explain if you want me to educate the people on what's at stake here. If we're going to reform our healthcare system, which we must, because right now it's unaffordable, we spend $5 trillion on healthcare per year. Biggest cost to the government, biggest cost to families, second biggest cost to businesses. And if we don't fix it, you're saying, oh, Americans love it if the government just takes over and spends more. Well, Americans also love it until we can't pay the debt anymore. And we're almost there, guys. When you start losing jobs, when you start seeing the government shut down repeatedly,
but how are you addressing it for the people who are going to see their premiums increase at the new year?
That's exactly my point. We need to revise the way we do healthcare altogether. We cannot
Can you do
continue
it
down
by
this road
January?
with government summation when insurance companies, you're not letting me finish the explanation. When you have insurance companies making 230% more profit with 1/3 of all claims denied, that's the kind of fraudulent stuff that needs to be corrected, and that will pay for itself. You'll keep the premiums down when you address the waste, fraud, and abuse that's in the system, not by just increasing the subsidies for governments on inefficiencies and fraudulent claims. That's not the answer, and that's what the Democrats are suggesting.
I don't think that many people would argue that they think the healthcare system works as they would like for it to work. But at this point, you have 500,000 people in your state who are looking at maybe losing their insurance because these premiums are going up at the new year. And the remedy that you're talking about is not going to fix that. But I do want to talk to you about something that your fellow veteran and your fellow colleague on the House Armed Services Committee, Jason Crow, said, because he said that this is a different kind of shutdown that Democrats are pushing here. And I mean, you know, we've seen different shutdowns over the years, and you know, voters normally don't like that. But he said that this one's different because the American healthcare system is at stake. And he also said it's different because this administration is taking unprecedented actions. I want to get your perspective on what he said. Here's part of it.
I am not going to vote for Donald Trump to fund Donald Trump politicizing and weaponizing the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies. I'm not going to fund him to send active duty military troops into cities and quote unquote declare war against cities because he doesn't like them. I'm not going to fund his political purges of the Department of Defense.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, Jason's my workout buddy in the gym. I will say his pull-ups need a lot of form work, and he is Army, but I forgive him on that too. But Jason's a good dude. But I think he's misrepresenting what's at stake here. When you lose elections, as Obama said, there are consequences. We have so much fraudulent spending right now. We have so much wasteful spending right now. We have a bloated government we can't pay for. We're in 30% deficit spending per year. We have crime in cities that's unaddressed. Look, I don't agree with everything the president does. But quite frankly, when problems aren't addressed, somebody has to address it. This is where leadership comes in. The Democrats basically say we want status quo, even though they lost the election, they lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost the presidency on the things they were running for, and now they want to pretend that those things were the right thing for the American people. They lost for a reason. They continue to cling to the wrong ideas.
You brought up pull-ups, which is actually a segue into a question that I wanted to ask you about. As I mentioned, you're on House Armed Services, and listening to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at Quantico, big focus on these PT tests. And one thing that I've heard repeatedly from many sources in the national security and military spheres is that the vision of the military that he's outlining ignores that the wars of the present and the future are drones, cyber, AI, and that he may be focusing too much on a vision of wars of the past. You're also on the cyber subcommittee of House Armed Services. What do you think?
I'm also on Tactical Air and Land. I was a Marine for 16 years and was a Navy ER doc for another 4 years. Also in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Nobody thinks about the future warfare as much as I do. I'm telling you, I've literally met with 20 Marine Corps generals of the past, former commandants. We talk about the future all the time. But when you talk about a warrior ethos, when you talk about what creates a lethal fighting force, somebody who increases the kill chain, when you talk about the future of any service, it starts with the idea that we're going to be fit enough to get to the area. We're going to have maneuver warfare, whether it's through drones or kicking in a door. When you talk about special forces, we're never going to be replacing the human unit. And quite frankly, when you talk about fitness is good for everybody, quite frankly. And if you're in the military, you wear the uniform for a reason. You represent something. When I look at you, I remember when Krulak was commandant back in the 90s, and he said, even if you pass the fitness standard, if you don't look good in the uniform, you're still in remedial. Why? Because you represent me. You represent the Marine Corps. You're part of the nostalgia that people buy into. You're part of the recruiting tool for our services. It's good for you to look good, and it's good for you to feel good, and
sure,
fitness is a big part of that.
Sure, and I mean, and you were famously in a Marine recruiting ad, to be clear, a very famous one. But are you worried that you could be losing out on very smart people, because this is a different kind of war. Are you worried you could be losing out on very smart people? Well, let me finish the question. Are you worried that you could be losing out on very smart people when instead there's a focus on people who are going to look really good in a recruiting ad? No offense to you.
No offense taken. I don't mind looking good. When it comes to recruiting and retention, fitness should be considered part of the bonus. You actually get paid to stay fit. You get given time allotted to stay fit. It's not bad for you. It's good for you. Why would I lament?
I just want to be clear. I'm not talking about people not. I'm not talking about people not hitting the mark, right? I'm talking about sort of the vision of what is being painted, right? Just to be clear about that, I'm not talking about a bunch of people who are like loafers who can't do that. I just want to be clear. Congressman Rich McCormick, thank you so much. For
I get it, nor am I.
No, go on.
Be your best mentally, physically, and spiritually. Go get them.
Yeah, we can all take that.
I think that's the model right now. We just have to be our best.
Yeah, that means a lot of different things. Congressman, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.